Hi, everyone. Welcome to SoDA Series Live. I'm Kristen Bell from the Strategic Development Team here at Adobe, and I'm joined by Tom Beck, Executive Director of SoDA. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Kristen. How are you? Thanks all for being here today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to have you with us today, too. Do you want to just give everybody that might not be familiar with SoDA just a little quick rundown on what SoDA is?
Yeah, for sure. SoDA is a global community for founders and leadership teams at digital design and innovation studios. We've been around since 2007, and we exist as a peer community for knowledge sharing to help all of our members become smarter, more connected, inspired to run the best design and innovation studios that they can. And we've been a partner with Adobe since the very beginning, and we launched this series during COVID, and it's been just a blast to keep it going over these last couple of years and to partner with Adobe to bring these discussions to you. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, and thanks for that update, Tom. Yeah, I have the privilege of working with the SoDA community in my role, and as Tom said, this is one of the collaborations that we do, SoDA Series Live, where we bring you just candid, in-depth discussions with agency founders and creative leaders from all around the world, largely from the SoDA member community. So we're super happy to have you here with us today, and we're excited for today's conversation with one of the longtime member organizations. So let's get started. We partner with Talon Wadsworth from our Adobe design team, and he leads a lot of these conversations with us. So we'll go ahead and bring Talon on. Hey, Talon.
Hey, I'm unmuted. Okay, I was really worried there for a second.
You're good.
Yes. Great to see you too, Tom. In particular, I feel like we haven't seen each other in a while.
So I know, no kidding, man. It's great to see you. I think your spring is going well so far.
Other than some tooth issues, and my dog getting hit by a car, but he's okay. It's been a wild spring, we'll say.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
but we're doing all right. So.
Okay.
My dog is also a tank, it turns out, and the car really was the one that got hurt the most. So
that's great. That's great.
Happy for you guys in that situation, anyway. Oh, how scary though. Gosh.
It was good.
Well, so let's bring on our guest, shall we? Hey, Adam.
Hey guys.
Hey, Adam.
Good to see you. Tom, do you want to do the honors of introing Adam here?
Yeah, for sure. Adam, thanks for joining us today. And everyone, Adam Baskin is Managing Director at Tool, a global production company, just does incredible work. You'll, as you get into it today, and we'll share links to their website in the chat, but just innovation through and through. Tool is always at the cutting edge of using some of the latest technologies, but also just incredibly inspiring and impactful creative ideas. They've been a member and partner in the SoDA community for many years, and just thrilled to welcome Adam today for the discussion.
Thanks for the kind words, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Adam. We're so Tom and I are going to jump off camera here, and we will join all of you in the LinkedIn chat, and we will do our best to surface as many questions as you have during the live stream for Talon and Adam. And yeah, so we'll see you in the chat. Talon, Adam, have a great conversation. And thanks so much for being with us. Looking forward to this one.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Tom. Adam, great to see you again.
What's up?
I've been really excited for our conversation since we had our initial sort of discussions a couple weeks ago. And I take it you're in a different locale this time around than when we spoke last.
I'm in a boring backdrop, Las Vegas hotel room, so I can't compete with your patchwork of color and hope.
It's the colors happening outside of your hotel room. I take it right now there in Vegas, being somewhat familiar with the scene. So great to see you. Really excited to chat. I always like to kind of start by having our guests really just kind of tell us about themselves in their own words. So, Adam, kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your creative journey. Like, how did you come to be a managing director here at Tool? And tell us kind of things that have inspired you along the way.
Yeah, definitely. So I came up as a producer through I've been at Tool for 10 years now. And when I started at Tool as a producer, we were really sort of in the cutting edge of this moment of the interactive web and new forms of storytelling. And so I've sort of worked my way through the industry from a producer to an EP, director of innovation-led productions, and now as managing director of our experiences in creative technology division. And, when I started at the Tool, like I was saying, at the time we were representing really incredible talent that was doing things at this sort of nexus between storytelling and creative technology and experiences, and doing really amazing, interesting work where we were winning, Emmys for Clouds Over Cuba and for Take This Lollipop, and sort of pioneering new forms of nonlinear storytelling. And, we've stayed with the different types of experiences, the different types of technology enabling those experiences throughout the years. And so we really evolved from a interactive web shop to a shop doing experiential. In the sort of first wave of VR, we built out a VR studio. When brands thought that, voice experiences would take over and dominate, we were working with brands to do voice experiences. But really experiential is our forte, both online experiences on devices, but also more and more in person, and leveraging creative technology to do experiences that people haven't seen before.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like the industries that you work with, the brands that you work with, like really want to be out there connecting with people in new ways as a way to really set themselves apart. I mean, would you kind of describe kind of the needs of the clients that really come to Tool like in that way? Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, most of the experiential work we're doing is awareness, upper funnel, brand positioning. We show up in culture a lot. We show up at large events. And so typically the types of experiences we're creating are in that vein, tying brands to culture in an interesting way, finding ways in via fandom and via things people really care about. And, more and more we work across different spectrums of marketing and advertising. But in terms of our experiential practice, it largely fits into that.
Yeah. And I mean, then so maybe give us a little bit of the history of Tool, like in that decade that you've been there, and kind of sort of some of those founding principles and the things that have really guided the work there at Tool, like in those sort of preceding years.
Yeah. Well, Tool, even before that, I mean, Tool was founded 25 years ago by Eric Joyner, who is still today a director. And so it's always been led from a purely creative vision. It's always had this DNA of creative excellence and craft at the forefront of everything that we do. And, in terms of that period of time that I've been at Tool and where the industry has changed, where we've changed as a company and a partner for brands, it's been pretty vast. And I think back in 2016, 2017, we started playing with machine learning, and really trying to find ways where machine learning could be a powerful tool for the experiences that we were building for brands to set them apart from anything people had seen. And it's funny because obviously AI is the buzzword now and is the soup du jour, but we were really trying to do things with AI and with really more machine learning when the tools were not impressive, and where you were really trying to strap together things that you had to build custom, and find smart uses of them to make them powerful. And we were fortunate enough in 2016, 2017 to work with brands like Toyota and Niantic across some natural language processing projects that we did, where we were building out custom models to create natural language for campaigns. Some of that, pre-generated content for really targeted ads on Facebook for Toyota. Other, and for Niantic with more experiential things online. And we also sort of started building up a discipline around computer vision, where a couple of technologists at the time then and still now are really experts in computer vision. And we were finding interesting ways to insert that into consumer experiences for brands. And we did some really amazing work back then for New Balance around New York Fashion Week, where we took over, the types of experiences we were using in computer vision. And one would be, we took over a retail location on street level, where as people were walking by during New York Fashion Week, a hidden camera would capture them. It would analyze, what they were wearing, their upper garment, their lower garment, and compare that in real time against a data set of what people were expected to be wearing in Soho, where we were doing that. And on a digital billboard at street level, it would show them in real time and then tell them how they were an exception to the trend. The whole idea was exception. New Balance wanted to be exception setters, not trend followers.
Mm-hmm.
It would tell you, you're wearing, pink polka dot pants and a leopard print shirt. You're an exception to the trend because 70% of people are wearing a monochromatic look. Obviously, I'm giving you fashion advice, Talon, but so that was an example of how we were trying to use and successfully using computer vision experiences then, and other projects at the time too, where we did a project that was a partnership between Grammys and Uber, where we were celebrating the Grammys being back in New York for the first time in 10 years. The project was called Play the City, and it was really about using the cityscape as the sort of data and the input for real-time generative music. And we built out a custom rig on the outside of this Uber, where as people would get into the rear passenger seat, there was a transparent OLED screen, a camera. They couldn't see any of it because it was on the outside of the car. And as the car drove around the city, the camera was recognizing person, dog, bicycle, fire hydrant, mailbox. It was recognizing all the things within the cityscape, each one of those being fed into a real-time music generation engine, quantizing that and turning it into a music track within the Uber experience, hence Play the City, turning the city into an instrument, basically. Yeah. And so, that's way back in 2016, and we were really trying to find ways to use machine learning as creative technology for consumer experiences. And then as, we sort of stayed with that, but as this wave of AI and tools that actually are very powerful started sort of hitting again in early 2022, that was already in our sort of DNA. That was already in the way that we thought creatively about how to create experiences. And so, really dove back in the past couple of years, have had a heavy emphasis on leveraging AI in creative ways, both for content creation, but more and more for experiences.
Yeah. No, those are amazing projects, and I definitely encourage anyone in the chat to go check a few of those out. I know I did my homework as well, and I remember hearing about the Uber one, the Play the City, back in the day when you all were working on that. And again, I've been a fan of the work ever since. And there's something really interesting here, I think, in the application of technology and the problems that you and the crew at Tool were looking to solve for clients. In that, as we all started sort of moving through the world, with these digital devices, and we started, of course, being more and more tuned in and online, that the bar to making a connection, with consumers out in the world really required brands and, of course, the agencies partnering with them to kind of up their game, right? And so, in a way, it feels like the adoption of these tools, at the forefront, of these large language models, these computer vision models, and then going all the way up through here, has really been one of need, of necessity, of solving really complex problems. I mean, you want to speak to that a little bit, like the trajectory of the types of problems that you've been solving, in that 10-year span, and the ways in which that's necessitated the adoption or the exploration of these new technologies.
Yeah, happy to speak about that. It's interesting because I think as brand marketers and as creatives, I think we understand well the shifts that have happened in the industry. I think as consumers, those shifts have happened in a slow and subtle way, even though over time they're quite significant. And you go from an era where we were mostly seeing brand content on broadcast that was general to all of us, to it being more targeted regionally, to now us seeing content that's specific to us because it's digital platforms, to it being social specific, social channel specific. And the possibilities for brands in terms of that overall media matrix and how targeted it is has gotten to a place where the ability to create that content hasn't actually caught up. So, there's this ability to target every user in a very specific way based on the channel they're being targeted from, based on what target audience they are, based on them specifically as an individual user even. But the ability for brands to fully capitalize and take full advantage of that matrix hasn't really been fully seen yet. And that's really where this moment of Gen AI is becoming interesting, is it's going to allow brands to do that. And I think we as consumers have started to expect that content and that the way brands show up for us is unique and is specific to us. And when we see things that are not, we almost have an allergic reaction to it without even knowing it. We say, that's an ad, I don't want it. And so I think that's one of the ways in which, both from a brand standpoint, but even from a consumer standpoint, the generative AI space in terms of brand advertising is a really natural fit, because it's allowing brands to target more effectively and connect with consumers more effectively, and it's allowing consumers to gain more value and actually care more about how they're being targeted, what they're seeing. And again, that goes across content, with modular content that can be generated in real time and dynamic, and it goes across experiences as well, where experiences, you might have a different experience than I do, and whether that's a deep pipeline we build out for Coke, or whether that's an experience at a music festival that's leveraging Gen AI tools to give every single person a unique experience, a unique track. Those are the tools that we're using at our disposal to really sort of, there's this, I think, a paradigm in the industry of megaphones versus magnets, right? There's this idea of the sort of old world, and still today in the sort of marketing matrix of paid and performance driven advertising, the idea of megaphones, pushing content and ads in front of as many people as possible, whether they wanted to hear from that megaphone or not, pushing it in front of them. And then there's this idea of magnets, which I think is largely where our world of experiential marketing fits in, which is really about pulling people towards you. It's about pulling people into the sphere without them understanding how or why they're being pulled into that sphere. There's just this energy, and that's really about showing up in places where people care, being in the cultural zeitgeist, finding these subtle and nuanced ways that people care, and that don't show up in people's minds as a skip ad button. And so I think that's the way largely that, the philosophy where we're seeing Gen AI as this massive connector between brands and people in a way that matters.
And kind of getting back to that, like, problems of scale that we were sort of briefly touching on, and the complexity of those problems, right? Like, how can a single designer, even a single design or creative team, sort of produce, like, the amount of assets that are necessitated to sort of operate at that scale, where every person that's interacting with your brand or your service has a tailored message or a tailored experience, right? We're not, even beyond something like omni-channel, which is, of course, having your brand represented on every possible surface. Now, on every possible surface, that experience is tailored to that person who walks up and interacts with that surface.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're playing in that space across a few different areas. One of the places where we've seen a lot of interest from brands in that is, we've been working on pipelines for green screen shoots that then leverage AI to turn those into, infinite numbers of ads that target different audiences, to combat things like ad fatigue, but also be more targeted. So we've been, customizing some pipelines for that. We have some work that's going to be rolling out soon across that stripe. In the experiential realm, we did a project a year ago that was a collaboration between Coke and League of Legends, where every user was able to get a deep faked trailer where they became the hero of that, minute and a half long cutscene, which was basically like a game trailer. And that's the kind of stuff that people really care about, and where we're able to use design and technology tools to bring people closer to the brand.
Yeah. You can see, even as you described some of those projects, in those kind of early stages in the 2016, 2017, a lot of these technologies were coming online. You can see the seeds that the tool was planting, in those projects that you described, for New Balance and for others, up to now, scaling them up to these experiences now as more of those capabilities come online to personalize, to stylize these things in a way that is targeted, right? You can see some of those those seeds being planted, and now do you feel like that you're starting to pay off on some of those ideas and some of those promises that you were starting to sort of see in the mid 2010s?
Definitely. I think there's two pieces to that. One is,
Yeah.
Over the years, there've been all these ideas we've come up with or briefs that we've seen where the ideas were, call it 90% feasible. But the last 10%, the piece that really would have made it special, was not technically possible yet.
Yeah.
So there's this whole sort of category of ideas that have been in the ether for a while that are now possible because of where the tech has come. I think there's and that's interesting in some ways, but I think the speed at which all these different Gen AI tools are progressing and affecting how we create is so fast that, to be honest, it's like a madhouse. Every day, the thing you thought wasn't possible yesterday is now possible today, and the thing you think is going to be cool tomorrow is already outdated. And so it's been really fun to work with our technologists and creatives, because the conversation is so dynamic. You can't sit by for a week without a new thing coming out that disrupts the thing that you thought was cutting edge and cool. So that is probably the most unique piece about this. I won't call AI a hype cycle because there's an insane amount of value in it, but in terms of this wave of disruption, that's the thing that I think is very different from other waves, is that the pace at which it is moving is staggering. We have multiple Slack channels internally for different slices of creative tech, of this, of that, and just to keep up with the things that everyone is posting is a full-time job. And so our weekly inspiration meetings that we do have become so lively and so dynamic and so unexpected every week, because the number of new things to talk about, look at, explore, research is never ending.
Staggering. Yeah, we have, multiply that by a large factor, and we have multiple channels, multiple Slack orgs with these conversations happening in real time. And yeah, it's staggering and hard to track for sure. Well, you've mentioned it a couple times, but I want to maybe take a step back and let's talk a little bit about Tool and how the teams and the talent is really structured. Like, tell us about who works at Tool and what roles they facilitate. You mentioned technologists, you mentioned other creatives, you yourself as a producer, as now as a managing director. Tell us a little bit about the makeup of Tool, and again, how you structure a team to try and really stay on top of these types of changes, these kind of technological changes.
Yeah, definitely. So, Tool as a company is, the easiest way to understand Tool as a company is we're two divisions. We have a content division with a roster of live action directors, and we have our experiences division, which is all experiential and creative technology. And we have a roster of directors there as well that do interesting things, from being design direction to experiential directors to creative technologists. And we have our in-house team, which is comprised of producers, developers, creative technologists, creative directors, designers. We have a creative technology studio out of Belgium and a 3D studio out of France. And so really, those are the pieces that come together to create the experiences, to ideate for brands, and then create those experiences that we're making. And so a typical Tool project is, an EP, a producer, a designer, a creative director, a creative technologist, and some 3D design work, and then whatever other pieces fit into the equation for the specific type of offering.
Mm-hmm. And what does the role of prototyping play, if any, like in the projects themselves, or in it as an ongoing sort of commitment, there at Tool? Like, how are you said you mentioned the inspiration meeting, how are you taking that inspiration and turning it into action, on the various projects? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think you sort of hit it. There's two buckets. There's the proactive prototyping and building that we're doing outside of project-based and client work to build out capacities, to build out frameworks, to stay ahead of trends. And that's really, I'd say, picked up in terms of the amount of bandwidth we've been putting towards that in the past 12 to 18 months. We've been actively and proactively building out pipelines in the AI space, figuring out where game engine plays a key role in terms of connecting AI pipelines and other tools. We've been doing a lot more proactive stuff that's not even for the consumer experiences, but also fits within other places of value for brands. And so that's sort of the piece. We've been really we have a offering called Toolkit, which really consists of us building out a number of different specialized pipelines, both for consumer experiences as well as for content creation. And so we've continued, as we see opportunities, as we see technology getting to these sort of breaking points where it's all of a sudden able to do a thing that was, 70, 80% possible, but is now ready for game time and has the level of craft that brands expect. We sort of immediately dive in and start building. So there's that piece of the overall framework and sort of IP that Tools builds out to support what we do. And then there's the other side, which is really project-based and specifically for clients. And prototyping does play an important role. We are engaged by brands a lot of times to do things that haven't been done before. And there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of inherent risk in trying to leverage technology in ways that A, it hasn't been used for, and B, it wasn't intended for. So whether that is leveraging depth cameras in an experiential setting to do real-time body tracking and ball tracking and turn people into avatars and turn balls into shaders and, have this real-time custom gamified experience like we did at the NBA All-Star game. Those are, inherently challenging things where 5% less feasibility than is expected will influence how the design and how the creative comes to life. And so in those types of opportunities, we certainly look at, prototyping or R&D phases upfront as a really important and informative step in order to go from a 90% confidence level on what the design and the creative and the final execution will be to 100% or somewhere approximating that before getting too deep into it. So certainly that's the other sort of piece of where prototyping fits into it. And then, you have the sort of loose definition of prototyping where we're not talking about code-based prototypes, but trying out ideas. And I think that's a piece where it's almost hard. You actually have to go back to pitches and creative decks from 12 months or 18 months ago to remember what it used to be like, because the pace at which ideas are being tested out, visualized, shown to get an idea out of one creative's head into the heads of everyone involved, happen in a day versus a week now. They happen in an hour versus 2 days. And so the pace at which we're able to prototype ideas, using that word loosely, alignment, explore new ideas, test and fail, the pace of iteration has changed so drastically that I think inherently creative ideas are developing in different ways because we have the luxury of exploring more ideas, being willing to fail in small increments, and then take a step back and start a new approach or a new idea. So I think that's one of those things that once you're in that, it feels so normal and you forget how it used to be. But you sort of have to take a step back and remember what it was, a couple of years ago, to be like, hey, well, let's bring on a sketch artist or a storyboard artist and do this thing, come back to us in 2 days with that thing. And now it's, someone who understands how to use prompt-based tools to generate that stuff in a matter of hours. And by the end of the day, everyone has alignment, or everyone says, hey, that was a terrible idea. Let's move forward with this other thing.
Yeah. I like as you're speaking about that kind of like loose definition of prototype, like ultimately, like what is a prototype? A prototype is a tool that is utilized to communicate an idea, and like you're saying, like the pace at which now, a creative designer can generate an idea and then be able to properly communicate it via that, whatever has been generated, get that feedback and turn around that next iterative cycle. When you're collapsing that time it takes, so between those feedback sessions and sort of iterative turnaround sessions, like you can imagine just like the places that we end up. Like, you can imagine that it could be infinite in a way, like the number of ways we could take this, because those iterative cycles have been now so condensed and the tools have enabled that type of prototyping, as it were.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a joke about, if you could travel back in time 100 years and show someone a smartphone, they'd be confused because they'd be like, well, first of all, what is this? You'd be like, oh, well, it's this device that allows me to understand every detail of human history and all the details of the universe. And they'd be like, that's interesting, but why do you use it to just look at cat gifs? And there's
the height of culture right there.
Yeah, exactly. Culture, at least. And then there's this similar thing, which is, if you were to take what a designer is able to do now, what a creative is able to do now, and go back 5 years or 10 years and be like, oh yeah, this is, a vision I created in one day. A designer 5 or 10 years ago be like, what sorcery is this? Like, where did you pick up the skill? And I think you really have to look at it through to remember how far these tools have taken us.
Yeah. There's this tagline that I used as I joined Adobe and started spinning up some projects, some tools to really focus on designers. My goal has always been sort of design at the speed of thought, right? The ways in which, again, like I felt like the tool was the thing I had to fight against, right? The thing that I had to sort of navigate through all these complexities in a very manual way just to get a result that I feel like should have taken me seconds or been instantaneous in a lot of ways. And so it's been, really exciting, I think, for, myself and for, my team around me to see just how fast we can get through those iterative cycles, right? The ways in which we can communicate effectively to then not try to get to the perfect result, but the next right result, for whatever the problem is we were trying to solve for.
Yep. Yeah, I think one of the other things as as we explore what these new tools are and where they fit in and how they create value, some of it is exciting because of the newness to it all, just our curiosity. Some of it's exciting because of real value. I think the piece that we always come back to is the tools that inherently have more control. That's where the real value will be. And I think seeing the things that are just a shiny object and are a fun and cool output but don't have the control, it starts to reinforce where the human creative and the human ingenuity is and will always be the hero, and where the tools are an expansion and an ability for us to expand on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. It actually reminded me of a conversation I was listening to yesterday on a podcast, really about the role of the editor, and how these tools are really necessitating that more of us are actually honing those skills of editing, of being able to make decisions and to have a defined taste. And guide these tools and these systems like towards that output. And it's really that sort of authorial or editorial voice that starts to become more and more important. Is that something that resonates with you, that you're seeing internally in the ways in which your creatives are adopting these tools?
Definitely. And I think, there's, again, this goes back to what I was saying. I think there's a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, well, these tools are so powerful, that is the end all be all. But the places where we're seeing the most benefit and where we're creating the most value, it's not when, AI is 90 or 80 or 70% of something. It's when it's a piece of it. It's a human's brain that is the predominant piece. It's a tool that allows that to be expanded upon. And it's a number of other techniques. We've done some work recently for Under Armour, big campaign spot for Anthony Joshua. And it was interesting to see that come out because the way that it was interpreted by different people who saw it was very different. It was dubbed as a spot leveraging AI, which it was. Yeah. It also leveraged existing footage. It also leveraged traditional VFX and post-production techniques. And that sort of AI mixed media approach is part of it. And I think, people see things so often nowadays as black or white, as an all or nothing, and it isn't that binary. It's it is another tool for us to expand on the places where we generate the most value from our own creativity and explore ideas and to use tried and true techniques. And so I think that's really the interesting piece, is figuring out where it fits into all these pipelines and all these approaches that we've always used, and to iterate on those and improve on those.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, at these moments of technological change, like, not only is there a lot of opportunity, but there also is a lot of anxiety, and I think, again, like, that there are, people in that pipeline, who might feel, under threat, and I think, but, it's always been the designer, the creatives who, are thinking very deeply and critically about how tools, impact their work and help them create that next thing, right? The designers are always like first in the door, in these new spaces and these new technologies, looking for ways to communicate, to communicate an idea, as again, and again, if we go back to that sort of thing we were talking about in terms of the scale of that, like if I'm a creative today and I want to, get the word out, like think about all the places that I have to and all the ways in which I have to communicate properly, just to have that chance that people are going to see this and interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, as you think about, again, like the role of, the technology, the tool, and again, these sort of proprietary, pipelines and things you're creating, is it, again, I sort of want to bring this back almost to like the business point for a minute, because I think that's something that I always find fascinating, is that, again, as we shift and change, how we create and what we're interested in creating, how does that play out with clients? Is this a selling point? Like, are people excited to work with Tool because Tool is out there on the cutting edge, driving these really fascinating sort of interactive projects, in these ways? Or is this something that you're still feeling like you have to convince clients to kind of go on this journey with you? Like, to talk about like that kind of tension for a minute, like, again,
Yep.
is it they're coming to it for that practice, or are you still having to do a lot of convincing when it comes to getting clients to go on these crazy adventures with you?
It's all over the place. We have a lot of trusted clients who are very ambitious, and have a lot of trust in us. And I think most people are quite curious. Most people within organizations are quite curious, whether just out of pure curiosity or out of, mandates saying, hey, figure out ways to leverage AI for the benefit of the organization. And so I think people are quite eager, and we're having a lot of, I think one of the things that this movement has created for us is an opportunity where we're being more consultative with our brand clients. It's not just about create this experience or create this piece of content. It is about how do we use this technology in a way that is an ongoing value for us? How do we use it to iterate and improve upon the traditional ways of doing things? So it's certainly allowed us to have, more open and consultative conversations with a lot of our existing clients as well as with new ones. But with any new area that has a lot of interest in the zeitgeist, there's a lot more conversation and education being done than actual movement. And so I think, our core is somewhere in between. It's continuing to create value with our clients for the things that we've been known for and that we've always loved to do in terms of incredible experiences and content. And it's finding ways that are intentional to insert the technology where it is. I think one of the pieces for us is that we've always tried to be a company that doesn't ever do technology for the sake of technology. And, working in the advertising space, it can be, let's say the advertising space can be frivolous at times. And so there's always things that pull us in different directions and, different desires. But I think our intention is always to use technology in an intentional way and not just for the sake of it. And so, so I think, that intentional way shows up, I'd say, traditionally for us, it's shown up as empowering creatives to tell stories in new ways and audiences to experience those stories in new ways. For our experiences, it's been creating experiences that that generate some sort of sense of awe or curiosity, because the technology is sort of invisible and not fully understood, but creates an emotional connection or some experience that is intriguing. And now it's also in more value-driven ways with, modular content and more scalable things, and building out pipelines that are, repeatable and can continue to deliver value. So I'd say it's intentional across those three places: creative and storytelling, creative and experiences, and then value-driven in some of the sort of content-based stuff.
Yeah. I was thinking, because I almost want to like pick your brain a little bit in terms of, as you're seeing your teams kind of, delve into these tools and these processes and really try to wrestle with like what it means and what the impact will be. And I love how you highlighted, the intentional application, of the technologies. But when you think kind of blue sky about it, or you think about that sort of far horizon, like what are some of those things like on the horizon that like you and your team are getting excited about in terms of the potential, for some of these tools and its application, in your work?
I just want AI to take my job so I can retire.
There you go. I mean, that's always the promise, right? Like that we'll have more leisure time to be out there in the real world, actually enjoying ourselves. Yeah, I would like that too.
We were joking about the other day with all the conversation of humanoid robots that, just a few years from now, we'll be able to have a robot that is a, living helper, and we'll be sold the robot that helps fix the robot. And so, I think it is certainly an aspect of, do we overcomplicate our lives? Do we overcomplicate our jobs in our industry? It goes back to the point about using technology very intentionally. One of my favorite books is Brave New World. It's very relevant today because it sort of poses that question of technology, and so I think it's a reminder to us all that there's so many things that these technologies can do, but let's move at a pace where we're using them intentionally and not just after them for every reason.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually, I've been rewatching some. I have a teenager now, and I'm finally able to introduce him to things that I love. And we've been watching Futurama. I don't know if you were a fan of that or still are, but it's been actually really fascinating, like how prescient a lot of those writers on that show were in terms of the robot to fix the robot, as you were sort of saying, and just sort of remind me of one of these moments in one of the early episodes the other day. Yeah. Everyone should go check that out and revisit Futurama if you haven't recently. Well, I'm going to put it out there because I always like to open it up to the chat to see if there's anyone out there who'd like to ask some questions of Adam or myself or anything that has come up or not, anything that's sort of outside. Again, we get a lot of people, Adam, who are kind of coming to learn about the industry, and maybe they're just starting out, or maybe they're changing sort of careers, or really just interested in the tools and technology themselves. Any advice you would have for any of those people who are out there maybe sort of participating in the chat today in terms of like things they should focus on, or things that they should be looking into, or ways in which they should be thinking about kind of their work as a designer or creative or producer out there in the world kind of going forward?
Yeah, sorry, I think the stream cut out for a second, but
no worries.
As anyone who is trying to move into the space or create specialty and new skills, some of the most innovative and talented people that I've seen in the AI space were doing something vastly different and fairly non-technical 12 or 18. Just happened to be extremely curious, willing to dive in, willing to know that they don't know that much, and have become really experts in a number of different things that they're doing. And so the tools are, fairly accessible for everyone. And, for anyone who looks at the space and says, I don't know what I'm doing, or that's not me, I think there's a real opportunity for people to quickly transform, how they see themselves and what their skill sets are.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think the creatives, again, I won't even say designers are putting particular labels on there, but those who are, I think, are open to diving into these new technologies and new spaces, like, can find something there. And it's really that curiosity, that engagement, with these tools, with these technologies, that really become that dividing line, that sort of, between the people who are finding something out and really leading versus those who maybe are just kind of working around the edges. So I agree with that. I always see that quality in those successful creatives, that curiosity. So yeah. Well, Adam, I also like to ask, like the people who join, what keeps you inspired? Like, have you read anything lately, or things that like what do you go back to sort of keep the well sort of charged, as it were, as you find yourself working on all these projects, working with all these different people? Like, how do you sustain your sort of enthusiasm and engagement with these spaces and these technologies? Oh no, I think we may.
So yeah,
I have. Sorry, Adam. Yep.
All good. I have two small children, and I think kids have this way of reteaching us old people how to see the world in simple and beautiful ways. You sort of relearn the curiosity and amazing nature of all the simple things in this world through their eyes. And even the technology aspect, it's easy to become jaded and sort of naysay everything, or say, oh well, that's been done before. And then I do something as simple as I do like Chat GPT storytelling with my girls sometimes, where we'll get a story, pick characters, they'll pick superpowers, they'll pick setting, all that. Out of nowhere, there's a story that is of their creation. We'll remix it, and then we'll images for it. And just being able to see, for us, whatever, that's daily stuff that we're using it for, and that's this magical thing. And so, being able to see all of it through their eyes, whether it's the technologies and the stuff in our industry, or whether it's just like the simplicity of the world and how crazy it is to actually inspired by nature. I sat on the floor outside in my backyard with my daughters. We were about this close to a butterfly that had just come out of its like pupa or whatever, and just sat there watching it, flap its wing. You see how the construct and the design of the world around us is, and you realize we don't need to overcomplicate things to find inspiration, to stop, slow down, and get it. And so more and more, I'm finding the ways in which I'm inspired, the ways in which my creativity comes through by stopping and relearning through the eyes of my children.
Yeah. No, those are two great points. I think those are two great points to sort of wrap on today. Thank you, Adam, for joining us, even as you're traveling for work, and we really appreciate it. And again, this is just favorite part of my day, is to be able to connect with really talented creatives like yourself and just talk some shop and get into the weeds with it. And I really appreciate all the insights you shared today. And yeah, hope we have the chance to connect again soon.
Great to chop it up, Talon. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I thank all of the listeners and viewers. We had a few little tech issues in here today, so thanks for bearing with us. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Today's recording will be available on the Creative Cloud LinkedIn channel. You can find it there archived. And then I'm happy to say that we are in the midst of very soon launching a podcast. So you'll be able to listen to us through your favorite podcasting services here soon. And just as a reminder, this is a collaboration between Adobe and SoDA, the Society of Digital Agencies, where we bring you inspiring conversations from some of the SoDA community member agency founders, as well as creative leaders, and just to share some of those insights with each of you. And hopefully you each found a little nugget of inspiration today. We hope you can join us next month. We'll be back on May 30th for a discussion with Tim Murphy, who is the founder of Sideways. And until then.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great afternoon or evening, wherever you're calling from.
Yep. Thank you.